Beautiful. I'll grab the link and you're good to go. Thank you for your patience.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you. Okay, it looks like we are now live. Let me check one thing. So if you're watching, give me just a sec here. All right, friends, we are live now. So thank you very much for your patience. And once again, congratulations on making finals. I'm going to go ahead and turn everything over to Jeff. If you'd all like to just take a moment to introduce yourselves, and then once we get started, the judge cameras can remain on. Otherwise, only the speaker camera should be on, the person actually giving the speech.
Okay, are we ready to get ourselves started? Okay, good evening and welcome to the final round of original oratory here at the NIETOC 2022 championships. I am the chair judge. My name is Manuel Halkias. I am a four-diamond coach, NSDA coach from Canton, Ohio, McKinley High School, where I teach English, AP seminar, and competitive speech. I also do a lot of acting and writing, and we'll introduce the rest of our judge panel. Judge Robin Monteith.
So my name's Robin Monteith. I'm from Washington State. This is my third year coaching speech and debate, where our team does pretty much all of the speech events and 3 of the debate events.
Okay, Judge Haley Valdez.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Haley. I'm a graduate from Rice High, Strive Prep Rice in Denver, Colorado, and I'm currently a student at USC.
Okay. Judge JD Jacob.
Hi, I'm an acting teacher and a speech and debate coach from Loveland, Colorado. I teach at Mountain View High School. I teach acting and language arts.
Okay, Judge Adam Moore.
Hello, I'm from Emporia, Kansas. This is my first year as a head coach. I spent 4 years previously as an assistant coach. I teach policy debate, forensics, and communication arts, which is our fancy way of saying public speaking.
Okay, Judge Sekou Sisse, correct?
Yes, that is correct. I'm Sekou. Nice to see all of y'all. I'm a debater from Wake Forest University. I've been doing speech and debate since I was basically in the 8th grade. So it's great to see all the amazing competitors here today.
Yes, and Judge Katie Jensen.
Hi, I'm Katie Jensen. I am the head coach in Marshall, Minnesota. This is my 7th year coaching, first year as head coach for the speech team. And I teach a bunch of different social studies classes here in Marshall.
Fantastic. Competitors, as each of you comes up to speak, I will serve as your official timer. I will give you whatever time signals you would like if you want time signals. And at the conclusion of your presentation, I will announce the time of your presentation. We'll make sure before each speaker begins that all the judges are ready. And we're going to start this round. Again, congratulations to all of you. Fantastic work for being this final of oratory. And contestant 012A, Tamia Bender, whenever you are ready, we'll get you up there. And then I will ask about time signals and I'll mute myself.
Hi, can everyone see me and hear me okay? Okay.
What would you like for time signals?
If I could just get a 1 down at, so sorry. If I could get a 1 down at 9 and a fist at 10 if I get there.
That's fantastic. I'm going to mute myself.
Okay.
And I will start timing at your first word.
Okay.
And I'll give you the thumbs up when I'm ready to start timing, okay?
Just For 16 years, I have grown up observing humanity and our way of living. Life can be trivial. Things we do are changing constantly, and we adapt every step of the way. But I have the one thing that might just save our world. Thick thighs. My good friend Lizzo has taught me that thick thighs can save lives. What better way to save lives than on social media? Hashtag rockin' bod. Hashtag twinning with Beyonce. Hashtag body positivity. The body positivity movement has been built around the notion of accepting all body types. However, this concept of acceptance is not equally applied to people of color. The body positivity movement lifts and celebrates white women while failing to provide positive affirmation to plus-size Black women, leaving Black women behind in yet another inclusive movement. So today, let's examine the history of body positivity, then understand why ignoring plus-size Black women destroys our body image. And finally, discover how to actively recognize Black women in the body positivity movement. Because I don't just want my thick thighs to save lives. I want all our thighs to save lives. Body positivity has evolved over the years, taking many forms, each way a possibility for plus-size people to gain acceptance and overcome discrimination. The Cambridge Dictionary defines body positivity as the fact of feeling good about your body and the way it looks. In the 1960s, body positivity, or the fat acceptance movement, introduced the idea of normalizing bigger bodies in New York City. And Jade Hayden's August 2021 article, titled A Brief History of Body Positivity, she describes the ideal of fat liberation and how the NAAFA, National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance, set out to correct the discrimination that fat people were facing and obtain equal rights. I understand that fat is a word nobody likes to say, but in the 1970s, the popular band Queen wrote a song called Fat Bottom Girls, about girls with a little extra junk in their trunk. I like to think of this song as a power anthem, letting me know that my fat makes the rockin' world go round. Despite my awesomeness, Tigress Osborne, chair-elect of the NAAFA, says the movement was inspired by the civil rights movements in the States decades earlier. Unfortunately, many people of color were left out of this conversation. Osborne goes on to say that white activists for the fat acceptance movement decided that taking on more issues than one may distract others, and they felt the Black community was already accepting of plus-size people. This is not the case. The Black community was neglectful of fat people, especially Black women, looking at them as less than. Andrea Shaw's book, The Embodiment of Disobedience, states that in the late 1960s, Black women's bodies were undesirable, seeing as they were too curvy, too thick, too Black. In 2016, Ashley Graham became the first plus-size model to grace the front page of the magazine of Sports Illustrated. Since then, there have been 4 plus-size models to be featured, and none of these women were African American. Plus-size Black women are unable to express their desire for equal rights, for just being women, Black, and fat. When I was a kid, all I wanted was a Barbie like me. Thankfully, I got something better. Furbies! Our biggest shame in America is the fat shaming of Furby toys. That and slavery. At least Barbie compensated with skinny Black dolls. Yay! Mickey Kendall, author of the book Hood Feminism, discusses in her February 2020 article that deceitful messages located in the body positivity movement prime plus-size Black women with a negative outlook on their bodies. She addresses TV ads and social media creators pushing the agenda of diet culture that involve plus-size women living their best lives. The frontrunners of these media affairs, white women. Kendall goes on to say, when you are constantly bombarded with messages that tell you your body is simply wrong, it can make you desperate to control and change it. Oscar-nominated actress Gabrielle Sidby, who has starred in Precious, was publicly shamed by radio host Howard Stern, calling her the most enormous fat Black chick I've ever seen. Whereas Rebel Wilson has been regarded as Hollywood's fun, quirky, chubby girl. Playing favorites in a movement that claims to accept all body types, regardless of race, gender, or background, leaves no protection for the bodies it decides to cast away. Stephanie Yeboah discusses the appeal to white women in her article titled "Why Are Women of Color Left Out of Body Positivity?" written in September 2017. She addresses how white women's bodies provide a safe paramount to white supremacy, as white feminists dictate whose bodies will be guarded and upheld, and whose bodies are worth being shamed. Kendall also discusses in Hood Feminism that by placing white women's bodies on a pedestal, it allows white supremacy to keep advertising harmful aesthetics that can keep plus-size Black women from participating in the body positivity movement. The American beauty standard pressures us into believing we won't fit societal beauty standards without shaving off our curves and toning down our culture. Because the only way we can appear on the front page of the body positivity movement is by changing our race. Plus-size Black women face many challenges living in America that claims freedom for all. But freedom goes without saying the difficulties of just being heard. But change is what we, as plus-size Black women, demand, and depends on communities putting in the work to achieve our goal of good body image and challenging the narrative that says our bodies are all wrong. Sonia Renee Taylor, author of the book, "The Body is Not an Apology, Radical Self-Love," instructs plus-size Black women to love our bodies unapologetically, take a stand against the societal beauty norms and the constant observation of our bodies. As plus-size Black women, we must say to ourselves, I refuse to be ashamed of my body. Repeating this statement helps us rewrite the negative perspective on our body image and will truly achieve positive mindsets. Good thing I have words I can say to myself after feeling guilty for eating an Oreo. Okay, fine, a double stuffed Oreo. Okay, fine, it was a full pack of double stuffed Oreos. You caught me. Ashley Shackelford, a non-binary Black activist, says, our fight to be humanized in white supremacist violence, protect our children, our family, our people, is a body positive movement. They later call organizations, corporations, and body positivity influencers to pay attention to plus-size Black women, understand our struggle, and provide the outlets that society so willingly gave white plus-size women. Sharonda Brown, the editor of the Wear Your Voice magazine, has started the campaign #BodyPositivityInColor to reclaim the body positivity movement and restore the transformative power it was intended for to help marginalized groups. Once you decide to be bodily conscious on social media, I encourage you to put your judgmental perceptions to rest and try #BodyPositivityInColor with a plus-size Black woman's body on your Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok page. Because once we do this, plus-size Black women will finally be included in a movement where our bodies are appreciated. Hopefully you're taking a page out of Lizzo's book and feeling good as hell as your thick thighs are geared up to save the world. Today we discussed the history of body positivity, then understood why ignoring plus-size Black women destroys our body image, and finally discovered how to actively recognize Black women in the body positivity movement. Black women's bodies seem to cause turmoil in the minds of ignorant people, but together we can help ease the confusion. Helping Black women's bodies feel loved, appreciated, and accepted is what we have to do to change the narrative to say, our bodies are all positively perfect.
Your time was 10:08. Are judges ready for next speaker? Okay. Our next speaker is contestant 004A, Lydia Voss.
Hi, can you see and hear me all right?
Lydia, what would you like as time signals?
Could I get a 1 at 9 and a fist at 10, please?
Fantastic. Let me mute myself, and then I will give you thumbs up and you can get yourself started.
All right. Growing up, my dad read to me before bedtime every night. Now, I know he had the best of intentions, but some of his book choices were difficult to listen to. When I was 6, he was reading through A Christmas Carol, and I remember thinking, how can a book with ghosts be so boring? One night, when he suspected that I had stopped listening, he promptly ended our reading time with the line, and then they died. Morbid, right? Now, thinking it was funny, he started to do it every night, and well, let's just say it gave Winnie the Pooh a pretty disturbing turn. I always had such a difficult time sitting and paying attention for, as radio great and longtime reporter Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. I didn't want to wait. And the truth is, many of us don't. When it comes to America's stories, the rest of the story isn't nearly as important or even as fun as a piece of the story. As Helen Boygas says in a 2021 Forbes magazine article, for the most part, jumping to conclusions is harmless, but it is a problem when that becomes the default. And that's where we're at today. Too often we form conclusions and judgments off of incomplete information. As a result, we misconstrue, morph, or completely miss the truth. As we analyze our piece of the story, table of contents, the first 2 chapters point out the culprits. How we first don't read past the first few pages, and second, don't listen past the first few words. Then we will peruse some impacts before finally we pore over some solutions. Of all the books that my dad read to me, there was just one that we could not finish. Now, let's just say the title was Gulliver's Travels, but there were long stretches of that book that went absolutely nowhere. Unfortunately, too many of us also struggle to read past the first few pages, or even just the title. According to a study published in the Washington Post, roughly 6 in 10 people acknowledge that they have done nothing more than read the headlines of news articles. The rest of the story tells us that these readers often walk away with distorted views on people and issues because these headlines are written in sensational, provocative, and exaggerated language. Annie Renaud, journalist for the publishing company Upworthy, speaks about her 2019 article titled, "Read the damn article, people." She explains how over 2,000 people left comments on an article that she hadn't even posted yet. It's hard to get the rest of the story. Renee DiResta, journalist for the Atlantic Monthly, describes in her 2021 article the way that social media platforms prioritize outrage because that feeds engagement, encouraging people to like, click, or repost. As she calls this amplified propaganda, or amplaganda. And what used to be the work of powerful governments and media moguls now operates from the bottom up with just a simple click from the outraged masses. We're all propagandists now, claims DiResta. And we've become just as dangerous as the old ones, with things such as hashtag ivermectin, hashtag stop the steal, hashtag canceled. This isn't the rest of the story. This isn't even a piece of the story or an accurate retelling. It's just the loudest and many times the angriest version. There were a few times where our readings would get so sad or even so scary where I would not want to listen. And our response is not unique. And that's my second concern. And many of us stop listening after the first few words. According to a Psychology Today article titled, "Are We Really Listening?" Only about 10% of us listen effectively. And in a study published in Scientific American, 3 and 4 high school students have no idea what their teacher just said. We are simply bad listeners. But our problem with listening is much more about won't listen then can't listen. Professor of Ratiolinguistics Nelson Flores, in the 2017 article titled, "Do You Hear What I Hear?" tells the story of too many English learners who get terminally tracked into EL classes because they do poorly on the standardized tests. He points out that the very skills of translating and being multilingual with limited proficiency are things that we reward in young white middle-class students, but see as a deficiency in EL students. The schools hear accents or dialects or foreign languages and rush to apply the EL or even special ed label. They aren't listening to the full story of the rich linguistic practices in these students. But this problem isn't just limited to our classrooms. I mean, what about our doctors? Can they really listen when, according to the Journal of General Internal Medicine, they average about 11 seconds before they interrupt a patient's story? Or what about the 31% of jury members who, according to a Columbia University study, seize upon a decision in the opening moments of a trial and refuse to budge in their thinking? Whether it is because of time constraints, pride, or rigid thinking. In too many cases like these, we don't hear the rest of the story because we simply refuse to listen to it. And sometimes it is so much easier to jump to the end of the story because so much of it has been deleted. In my 6th grade Minnesota history class, we spent an entire year studying the indigenous cultures, customs, and communities of the area. But what we didn't study was the fact that in the winter of 1862, soldiers built a 12-foot wall enclosing a space a little bit bigger than a football field, where they imprisoned 1,600 non-combatant Dakota people. And according to the Minnesota Historical Society, this was a concentration camp. Without proper food, protection, or medical attention, upwards of 300 people would die by spring, all of which took place just 15 minutes from the classroom where I did not learn it. In his book, Heartbeat at Wounded Knee, David Troyer reminds us of this part of the story, along with the warning that this tragedy is not the totality of the Dakota or Native American people, but it is the part that we oftentimes ignore or rewrite because we don't like it. And I think that is exactly our struggle. We don't just miss the rest of the story, we rewrite it. We read their bumper sticker or their Facebook post, and suddenly we have them all figured out. We see them in public without a mask on their face or wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, and we think we know all we need to know about them. Their politics, their worldview, their moral character, regardless of whether it is true. We rewrite other people's stories to fit our own needs. And instead of becoming the authors of our own destinies, we designate ourselves the author of someone else's. One of the most common themes of my dad's books were that people and things are rarely what they seem to be. That's why we have to read the rest of the story. But how do we do that? First, read the signs. Daniel Kahneman in Thinking Fast and Slow explains that it begins by recognizing the signs of our cognitive minefields, because once we get to know them, it becomes a little bit harder to make that jump to the end of the story. These signs include mind reading, where we assume we know the hearts, feelings, and intentions of others, and fortune telling, where we assume we know how something will turn out or how someone will act. Next, beyond reading the signs, we need to turn the page. The civil rights activist and professor Loretta Ross explains that we could all be a little bit better at calling people in to finish telling their stories instead of cutting them off or walking away. She also explains that these conversations aren't meant for everyone, especially those who have been hurt or traumatized by the community and who are not ready to talk yet. But for the majority of us, she encourages a return to conversations we have cut short, to listen with curiosity, to be humble, and to encourage growth, to read just a few more chapters of the story. These days, my dad is reading to my grandma. Her favorite book is an 800-page biography of Teddy Roosevelt, which she loves because she thinks Teddy was misunderstood. I mean, yes, he was feisty and a little bit problematic, but he had a big heart. And that's what the rest of the story is about. Something that we can all search for together. Truth, meaning, and above all, hope. And then they died. Just to see if you were still listening.
Your time was 10:26.
Thank you. And then may I please be excused to my other event?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are the judges ready for the next speaker? Okay. Our third speaker is contestant 106A, Swadish. If you may turn your camera, is on, I see. What would you like in terms of time signals?
I should be all good. I've got the time on my end, but thank you so much for offering.
Oh, fantastic. Again, I will mute myself and then I'll give you the thumbs up when it's good for you to start for us, okay?
Sounds good. Yeah, I thought my family was driving me crazy until I read about the ancient Greeks. Yeah, I mean, this guy and his mother have nothing on Hera and Heracles, the most awful family of all time. Check it out. When king of the gods Zeus has an affair and names his son Heracles, or Hera's gift, his wife Hera gives the baby a gift. 2 gigantic serpents, a little cold-blooded, if you ask me. Somehow he survives, but Hera's gift-given game just gets godlier. At Heracles' wedding, Hera really steps it up with her gift. This time it's a fit of mad rage that leads him to murder his wife and children. I mean, I guess she thought a vase was just a little too basic. The OG Heracles did not put the glad in gladiator. And 2020 data from Gallup suggests that Americans don't either. People were so angry, they didn't just break physical objects. They broke records. And this trend predates the pandemic. As our generation grew up, cyclic rage went from the stuff of mythology to a social pathology. And that's my concern. I fear we have entered a new age of outrage, lighting our discourse ablaze with a nationwide flint of fury. In doing so, we've fallen prey to a vicious cycle of venom and vitriol so toxic that it makes the Greeks look great by comparison. So today, let us open the pages of America's outrage odyssey by first investigating the causes of our collective wrath, next discussing the harms of this deep-seated displeasure, and finally saying, no thanks, to Hera's gift of rage. So the Hera and Heracles beef began from the beginning. I mean, when she realized he was about to be born, Hera threatened the goddess of childbirth to try and prevent that from happening. Really keeps you appreciative. Just like this furious family feud, our tendencies toward anger began way before birth. Psychology Today writes that as a result of millions of years of evolution, anger is actually rewarded by human neurobiology, giving us a rush chemically comparable to a high. It feels good when someone cuts you off and you employ your choicest vocabulary in their general direction without regard for your kids in the back seat. It's how children learn 90% of their swear words. We don't just see it show up in road rage. We saw it last November when a pair of anti-maskers entered an Ohio cookie store. Now, people are within their rights not to wear a mask, but businesses can ask anyone not compliant with store mask policies to leave. Naturally, diplomatic negotiations commenced by means of fist fight. There were more F-bombs dropped than in your average Gordon Ramsay show, and this time wasn't because of how the cookies tasted. Today, outrage as an assertion of opinion has become all too common, shaping what Yale historian Joanne Freeman calls the politics of rage. And central to this shift is the media. In their book, The Outrage Industry, Tufts professors Barry and Sobiraj estimate that outrage rhetoric or behavior is used in televised political discourse every 90 seconds. I mean, isn't that absolutely ridiculous? Oh, it's when we see our political leaders diss instead of debate, watch experts express rage instead of educate, or doom scroll inexorably through Instagram and Twitter feeds that we're trapped by this unending cycle. Because we hate feeling wrong, but we love feeling wronged. And by constantly clicking on outrage-inducing content, we fall deeper into the Hades of our unmitigated umbrage. So after Hera makes him murder his family, Heracles heroically engages in penance for his killing, mostly with a lot more killing. He fights the Hydra, big multi-headed snake demon thing that grows two heads every time you chop one off, courtesy of, you guessed it, Hera. Addressing our anger head on, it's like fighting the Hydra. Even well-intentioned, it causes more harm than good, both interpersonally and intersocially. An August study by the University College of London found that 1 in 5 surveyed adults had experienced a complete relationship breakdown over the pandemic, owing to surging frustration and rage. And what's more concerning, as found in a 2021 study by the UC Davis, is rising levels of domestic violence and abuse in household environments. In many ways, the pandemic is responsible for amplifying the prevalence of rageful reactions. I mean, the Will Smith Oscar slap. I was going to make a joke about it, but I just want to make sure he isn't on this call, is he? Even if we look beyond the pandemic, we're seeing the evidence everywhere. In defending his invasion of Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed his goal was to denazify the sovereign nation. But Yale historian Timothy Snyder argues that this rhetoric exploits the fear, rage, and trauma of a generation that bled heavily in war with Nazi Germany. The savage irony is that Putin's own deliberate dismissal of internationally recognized borders mirrors Nazi military tactics. To make matters worse, Ukraine's democratically elected leader is not only not a Nazi, he's a Jewish man who lost family members to the Holocaust. Every time we choose outrage, whether to justify our wars or defend our political opinions, we forego level-headed discussion, ignore the facts before us, and blindly plunge into whatever direction we're told will make things better. Even in the worst of circumstances, swinging our swords simply exacerbates the problem. And though the pandemic has cemented outrage as a new norm, history shows us the price we pay for a culture of wrath. After the attacks on September 11th, outrage was expectedly ubiquitous. This nation had been assaulted, and for many of us, so were our family members. As the son of a 9/11 survivor who barely escaped the burning building with her life, I know that as a result of someone's hateful actions, I might not exist today. And does that thought make me angry? Of course. Paying the price of trauma for someone else's actions is outrageous. But that's what's so pernicious about outrage. It always feels right, even when it repeats what it claims to reject. Our collective outrage led to racist violence against brown people, unconstitutional surveillance of religious minorities, and tens of thousands of civilian casualties in a putative war on terror. America's response to 9/11 was giving in to the same hatred that brought this nation to its knees. Though refraining from rage when we're at our most broken can seem like the stuff of myth, there has got to be a way to commemorate the lost lives and what they stood for with heart, not hate. Look, I'm not saying there's no place for anger in civil society, or that we should all be smiling 24/7. It's just that in a time and culture overrun with fury, we need something more meaningful than Hera's path of revenge to end this outrage odyssey. So, to whom do we turn? I say we stay away from Hera and also Zeus and just the whole Olympian militaristic faction and turn toward Pistis, God of honesty. Harvard psychologist David Rossman writes that anger is often used to mask deeper feelings of emotional vulnerability because it's easier to be furious than it is to be forthright. There's an entire clinical approach based around this idea called emotionally focused therapy. I'm not saying we should all sign up, but there's something we can adopt from its central premise. Revealing our rawness and emotional vulnerability can be extremely effective in breaking the outrage cycle and in substituting our anger for the truer causes underneath. If I'm yelling at someone to mask up or to get the shot, in truth, I'm afraid that my family is at risk. And though your politics might be intransmissible, left or right, everyone can understand looking out for their family. In terms of rejecting the outrage industrial complex, you could always just, delete your social media. But if the thought of that just makes you even angrier, I'd recommend checking out Perspective. It's a freely available machine learning toxicity algorithm developed by Google. With a combination of more vulnerability in our relationships and Google APIs, we'll not only be better equipped to reject outrage, but statistically less likely to become a Greek myth. The ancient Greeks had some pretty messed up familial dynamics, but turns out our favorite mother and son get a happy ending. Once Heracles ascends to the heavens, Hera marries her daughter to him and gives him one final gift. The hug. Probably. I wasn't invited. This pandemic has shown us our most rageful depths as mere mortals struggling to navigate an outrage odyssey. But we can reckon with our deepest wounds without wrecking our chances at finding happy endings of our own. So try it out. I hear it's all the rage. Thank you so much.
Your time was 10:01. Are our judges ready for the next speaker? Okay. Our next speaker is number 077A, Ariv. What would you like for time signals?
I should be all good. Let's go with the flow.
Okay, I will mute myself, and when I give you the thumbs up, you can go ahead and get started.
I want to tell you right here, right now, that I'm not going to give you another oratory intro. None of that, my dad is a Michelin star chef or my mom is a pop star. Because as much as I wish that was true, my dad is vegan. And my mom is, well, my mom's a sweet singer. So yeah, let's try something else. Look, all of us come from someone, most of us humans, and for the uneducated, others storks, but there's something all of us have in common, something Reddit user Nizamar illustrates quite well. My parents are boring. I will never be like them. We've all grown up to not be our parents, to do what they couldn't. We strive to be recognized as unique and special. We fear becoming our benchmark for ordinary. Our parents. We hate the normal. In fact, we argue it's overrated. And that's my concern. Whether it's forcing ourselves to order the quirkiest dish on a menu, not settling for second place, or trying to write a creative intro to a speech out of my necessity to be different, we can't settle for ordinary. Searching for our abnormal has brought us to discount our normal. And now more than ever, in a world that is rapidly returning to a new normal, it's imperative we shift our mindset towards the value of being so. We must normalize being normal. So first, let's look at some causes. Then let's look at some effects. And then, of course, some solutions. Told you I was unique. And it's all Charles Darwin's fault. According to his Origin of Species, the species that survives is the one that is best able to adapt and adjust to the changing environment in which it finds itself. He didn't do it that way, but I thought it was cooler. If the most cited person in American elementary education says adapt, have better qualities, that's how you'll survive. I get why we want to be better than everyone else. We've been raised in a society that believes that fittest survive. And we all think that that fittest is us. That's why in 2017, researchers from the Department of Psychology in South Korea found that when asking individuals to measure their abilities on a metric, the majority of them said they were above average. That's statistically impossible. We fear being normal so much, we automatically rank ourselves above it. This illusory superiority leads us down that well-known rat race, which ends in a cataclysm of comparisons, in which we compare ourselves to normal and think we must do more. So for cause number 2, let's start off with Psychology Today, who says over 10% of our thoughts involve comparisons of some kind. So get this. We spend over 1/10 of our time worrying about how much worse we are than someone rather than working on ourselves. And this is most prevalent in my generation. In their 2021 study, Facebook, Meta, reported over 40% of individuals who said they felt unattractive, and 1/4 of teens who said they felt not good enough said the feeling began on Instagram. What we see is society is autonomously able to organize itself into implicit social hierarchies. We may think we're the most secure people in the world, but the moment we look at everyone else, and I mean the curated, algorithmically defined everyone else, our self-pessimism is perpetuated. Who am I to be normal when everyone else is so much better than me? Okay, so how do we solve this problem? By going to the harms first. Our first harm arises in the ease of which we begin to sacrifice our values for our reputation. Or, as psychology professor Dan Ariely puts it in his book, Predictably Irrational, sacrifice personal utility for reputational utility. That's why the International Center for Academic Integrity reported in 2015 that 95% of 70,000 students admitted to cheating. They cheat on a 10-point quiz because their quest for perfection overrode their integrity. Let's take Elizabeth Holmes, founder of Theranos, as an example. She founded a multi-billion-dollar blood testing startup that didn't quite blood test properly. And she knew this, but by the time the public had found out, she had raked in billions and misdiagnosed millions. Charged with 4 counts of fraud, she now expects up to 20 years in prison. So we'll reach for the stars, barely miss them, and find our way on the closest asteroid back home, headed for destruction. When we don't meet this societally generated benchmark for normal, we misdiagnose ourselves with incompetence. Take Catherine DeWitt, student at the University of Pennsylvania. When transitioning from high school to college, the new normal became best in the world. People would walk into class wearing full makeup. She had acne. Even the photos they posted on Instagram made their lives look better and hers worse. With her rigorous work week, changing exam schedule, and growing insecurity, she reasoned, if I can't fit in, if I can't even meet average, then I don't deserve to be alive. And she's not alone. In a society where suicidal ideation rates amongst people like me have risen by 200%, this decision shouldn't be the norm. New York Times author Julie Skelfo tells us these cultural dynamics of perfectionism have built adolescents who are hyper-focused on success. They don't know how to fail. One of those adolescents as well. Growing up in the Bay Area has made me feel like success meant one of 3 things: make a company, attain enlightenment, and do a bit of philanthropy in between. So when quarantine started, rather than spend time with my family, I made an account on LinkedIn. And rather than play with my brother, I'd scroll. And I'd scroll. And I'd scroll, and I'd scroll, and I'd have these moments. I'm too normal. I'm too average. I'm not enough. I told my parents this for months on end. But so what? I didn't solve enough math problems or cure enough cancer. Was it my fault? The way I live and the values I hold are fundamentally different from the person in front of me. How can I feel like I'm not enough when my best friend lands an internship, wins a competition, or just succeeds? Enough, normal, unique, these are all words built upon my assumption of what the people around me define them to be. But I may never be enough. They may never be enough. But that's fine. Now, I won't pretend to come up with creative solutions to a problem as complex as this one, but I have some suggestions, and they revolve around the Sanskrit word mudita, which means pure joy with unadulterated self-interest. There are many ways we can practice mudita, but here are two. Number one, appreciate. Be thankful for what you have. You'll end up having more. A focus on what you don't have, and you will never, ever have enough. Oprah said that, so we all best believe it. And let's focus on the small things, the things we take for granted. For me, it's parents, the habit of running. Home. What are yours? Use them. Natalie Kogan, author of Happier Now, recommends writing down 3 good things that happened in your day and making it a habit to say thank you at least once. Let's stop looking for happiness out there and learn to find it right here. Number 2, celebrate. If COVID's taught us one thing, it's that normal isn't that bad. So let's not wait for the next pandemic, natural disaster, or war, or for that matter, to teach us that what we have right now is worth celebrating. So celebrate your victories, small or large. And I'm not saying stop trying to make that company help those people or buy the next Twitter. I'm just saying don't let that strife turn toxic and lead to yours and other people's demise. And we can start right now. Competitors, at the end of the round, whether you do better or worse than normal, celebrate your message, your advocacy, and your competition. I mean, without you, I wouldn't be here. Now, this speech was created after a conversation I had with my dad in the car. He told me how lucky he was to live a life with kids like me, food, water, shelter, parents who could raise him. He said, I'd have reached as high as you want, but don't forget the beauty in this. In a normal, happy, healthy life. As much as it may seem so, it's not that boring after all. Remember, we're coming out of a pandemic, so take a second to step back, breathe. Take yourself a little less seriously, because at the end of the day, it's okay to be average. It's okay to be normal. It's okay not to have a real conclusion at the end of your speech, but no, it's okay. It's okay to be you. You're enough. You really are. Thank you.
Your time was 10:19. Are the judges ready for the next speaker? Okay, our next speaker is contestant 004D, Ilham.
Hi.
What would you like for time signals?
Just the fist at 10.
That'd be fine. Let me mute myself and then you can get yourself started when I give you the thumbs up.
The fashion world can be a cruel place to be. You either have it or you don't. Like Blake Lively at last week's Met Gala. Now she had it. But on those very same steps was Kylie Jenner, who had a wedding dress, a veil, and a backwards baseball cap with flowers poking out the top. She may not have had it, but she sure had everything else. In the fashion world, those are your only options. You either have it or you don't. And our objectiveness to this nuance is summed up in one critical word. Or, more specifically, the weaponization of the word. as stated by Pajitha Kalari in a 2020 article in Medium, is known as the tyranny of or, which I'll define as a mindset of dividing everything onto one side or the other. Never both. But this is about more than a fashion faux pas. It's about the way we interact with each other, see the world, and even solve our problems. The tyranny of or has always been with us, and some of the distinctions are less serious. You're either a cat person or a dog person. You're either a fan of Kanye or you're normal. But others hold a little more weight. You're either Republican or Democrat. You're either with us or against us. As a result, it chips away at our ability to talk about complex issues or to see one another as fully human. Dr. Susan P. Robbins of Journal of Social Work Education explains that the tyranny of or and binary thinking lead to dangerous reductionism, the normalization of rigid thinking, and extremism. Using the fashion world as our model, let's consider two impacts of the tyranny of or. First, we lose ambiguity. Second, we gain zero-sum thinking. Then we'll look at the harms, and finally, some on-brand solutions. The fashion world is afraid of ambiguity. I mean, the Snuggie. What are you? A blanket or pajamas? White sneakers? Are you high heels or tennis shoes? And Rihanna's naked dress. The entire idea is a bit ambiguous. I mean, is it really a dress if it doesn't prevent nakedness? But that's the struggle we have with the tyranny of or. We are uncomfortable with ambiguity, especially when we first meet people. Michael Omi and Howard Winant, in their book Racial Formation in the United States, explain that when there's confusion about someone's race or gender, people feel uneasy. What are you, black or white, man or woman? And our discomfort with ambiguity often drives us to the tyranny of or. Are you this or that? Most recently, according to an April 2022 New York Times article, Tennessee, along with 5 other states, are pushing to allow school board candidates to declare their political affiliation. So instead of attracting a rich, diverse group of candidates, voters will be left, yet again, with just 2, Republican or Democrat. We create these false dichotomies to combat our ambiguity. You have to stand for the anthem, or you hate America. You either accept America as it is, or you leave. But this is just lazy thinking. It might simplify things, but it ignores and erases all of the people who both love and cherish this country and are angry at its shortcomings and failing. This for us or against us way of thinking might be all the fashion, but let's be honest, it just doesn't look good on us. And neither does our zero-sum thinking, which is a perception that one person's gain is another's loss. If this was Project Runway, it makes sense. Someone has to win and someone has to lose. But much of life doesn't operate under zero-sum principles. Fox commentator Tucker Carlson has actually made this quite fashionable. He often states that people are either American or they don't belong here, that they need to be removed, or they will steal your job or even steal your vote. Beyond being rooted in a highly racialized trope, this way of thinking characterizes a world where you either belong or you don't. You're either an immigrant or an American. But I struggle to understand. Why not both? So many of our arguments stem from zero-sum thinking. To admit that you're right means I'd have to admit that I'm wrong. A boss, a principal, or an officer who cares more about being right than about truly fixing the problem. It's a zero-sum game, where the tyranny of or tells me that I can either win at their expense or lose at my own. And the fashion accessory that goes along with it is the idea that if I can't win, no one can. Heather McGee, in her book, The Sum of Us, gives the example of the 1950s, when courts ruled that public pools should be integrated. And instead, many cities shut them down. The decision hurt not only Black children, but white ones as well, because no one could access these public pools. Ultimately, there are no winners or losers when we mistakenly apply zero-sum thinking. There are just losers. The tyranny of or pushes us into other dangerous mindsets. Philip Fernbach, in a 2019 Harvard Business Review article, points out the way the tyranny of or leads us to amplify or exaggerate our differences. It fossilizes our understanding of each other, leading us to believe that people's positions are fixed, unchanging, permanent. But most of all, it's the way the tyranny of or forces us to compress people and experiences into tiny boxes. That's why it's so concerning that about half of all Republicans and half of all Democrats see members of the opposing party as immoral. It divides a broad range of people into oversimplified groups, making it so much easier to villainize them and make them seem like the enemy. It's a feeling that my family has come to know. On election day in 2020, my dad went to the polls, and as he waited in line, the man behind him decided it was the perfect time to voice his concerns. The man asked, "What are you doing here?" "Voting," my dad replied. And after some time, he finally said just what he was waiting to say. "You don't sound American." How does an American sound? I don't see why we have to be divided into one thing or another. But the tyranny of or dictates that we must choose a single identity. And I refuse to, because I am more than just woman, just Black, or just Muslim. I am more than just a daughter or a student, more than just an American. It's not just a tyranny, but a dictatorship. And it doesn't just impact me, it imprisons us all. The Met Gala designers love a good challenge, and I'd like to now extend that to the broader community. Something a little more sophisticated than socks with sandals. First, challenge the language. We need to get used to replacing the or with an and. People can love this country and still feel the need to protest. People can adamantly disagree with one another and still see each other as decent human beings. Then, challenge the premise of the argument. According to Stan Barney in his book Logic, the tyranny of or argues that two ideas must be mutually exclusive. And it's our job to explain why those two ideas can both be true at the same time. For example, if the claim is that your feelings towards someone can either be positive or negative, explain that it's possible to have mixed feelings. And finally, challenge the dichotomy. You can do this by applying a technique called the hidden third. It's the practice of forcing yourself, when faced with the dichotomy, to consider at least one other viewpoint or option. Many times, it is enough to get you out of rigid thinking. The gala is a big night. You want to look good as you make your way down the red carpet. And I think that it all starts with the shoes. Now, the tyranny of or might lead us to believe that we can have a cute heel or a comfortable sole. But if we challenge that, we'll have a strong heel and a good soul. Thank you.
Your time was 9:25. Okay, are the judges ready for our final speaker? Okay, our final speaker is contestant 002B Esther.
Hello, I just want to check that you can hear me fine and see me fine.
Yes. What would you like for time signals?
I should be all good on time signals, but thank you.
Okay, I will announce the time when you're finished. Let me mute myself when I give you thumbs up. You may begin.
I was protesting before it was cool at Liberty Elementary School, home of the Patriots. When my second grade teacher cut recess by 10 minutes, I staged a sit-in. When Miss Cornelia, the lunch lady, gave Jeffrey, the paste eater, extra chicken nuggets because he's a growing boy, I held a hunger strike and got sent to guidance, which was ironic because the posters in the guidance office told me that if I don't stand for something, I'll fall for anything. But according to peers, teachers, and admin, that's not how we show our patriot pride. And as I'm growing up, I'm realizing this sentiment against criticism transcends beyond my school halls. Likewise, those of us who are critical of the ways America fails to live up to its promise of freedom and equality for all are viewed as troublemakers, rioters, and even anti-American. And I'm worried that if we continue to promote this idea that patriotism is to blindly love, irrespective of our flaws, we are doomed to continue our past and present mistakes, whether it be the miscarriages of justice or the outright bigoted remarks made to protesters. America has always painted its critics as its enemies. However, as Harvard professor Kahil Muhammad contends, if we believe we've reached some kind of democratic promised land where we no longer question America, we lose the very basis of the country. So today, let's first recognize why we're so blindly in love. Then understand its harms to us as a country, for finally learning how to become critical patriots. Thomas Jefferson, founding father and slave owner, said dissent is the highest form of patriotism. But many disagree because of, come on, say it with me, indoctrination. I mean, I guess I haven't indoctrinated you enough to know that yet, but indoctrination is simply education. So pledging allegiance or receiving an education that highlights American excellence, does that mean we're being indoctrinated? Yeah, and it's okay. We should be proud of this country. However, how this indoctrination is imparted is a problem. Sean McGrath of the Evening Sun explains that we're taught America can do no wrong, that America the beautiful is in essence America the infallible. So many are indifferent when America's flaws are exposed. For example, since elementary school, I was taught that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. But when an article explained that the Emancipation Proclamation didn't actually free anybody, I was immediately dismissive. Mr. Penny didn't give us a cent. My blind love of America's great emancipator kept me from seeing the full truth. And since I was an outspoken little patriot, I was always at the end of the line. And it's not too far off from how America has historically treated dissenters. Uncle Sam said snitches get stitches. American Studies professor Ben Railton elaborates that those who point out America's flaws are seen as both unpatriotic and undeserving of being part of the national community. Suffragettes arrested, civil rights activists terrorized, Black Lives Matter protesters, also terrorized. And Colin Kaepernick is not only characterized as anti-American, but bombarded with several derogatory names. David Hogg, a survivor of the Stoneman Douglas school shooting and gun control activist, was harassed and berated by United States Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. We have begun to believe that one cannot be American and criticize America. Failing to criticize prevents America from progressing, making us destined to repeat history, especially if we continue glossing over it. Section 4, Part 10 of Texas House Bill 3979 on history curriculum in public schools mandates educators to teach that, quote, slavery and racism were anything other than a failure to live up to America's founding principles, end quote. Attempting to alter ugly truths of history sets us back, 200 years from addressing its lasting impact America refuses to address issues resulting in repeating fatal mistakes. We struggle to criticize our right to bear arms, yet lead in mass shootings. We struggle to criticize our deteriorating healthcare system, yet have the highest maternal mortality rate of any developed country. We struggle to criticize our response to COVID-19, yet lead in cases in deaths. And if we keep this up, not even sure we'll have a country left. And the country we do have left manipulates our blind allegiance, perpetuating ignorance within our society. When we fail to criticize rhetoric, such as former President Trump's comments that Mexicans are stealing our jobs, or his stolen election tirade, causing 2,000 people to break into the Capitol, we deepen division among us. With anti-police rhetoric such as ACAB, all cops are bad, trending on TikTok with over 500 million views. Or US Senator Mitch McConnell saying that Blacks vote at the same rate as Americans, as if we weren't Americans to begin with. Or with the usage of phrases like China virus, fueling the over 9,000 acts of violence against Asian Americans as reported by NPR. We all fail to call out the outright and subtle inflammatory rhetoric. And until we do, progress will not come. So, in order to channel second grade Esther and combat this blind love of America, we must become good critics by first re-educating ourselves with the truth. An easy way to do this is using the free app or Chrome extension, Ground News. If you look up an article, it will show you the bias of the media company who wrote it. Then pulls together numerous articles on the same topic, giving you a percentage of the media bias distribution. From there, it gives you, the user, the power to decide where you will get your news from. This free app can be the first step we all take to unlearn the half-truths we've been given and begin seeing America in an honest lens. Let's show our patriot pride by holding America accountable. Samuel Adams, founding father and ale enthusiast, said for true patriots to be silent is dangerous. Given the fact that he was the first to spill the tea in the harbor, I believe him. When situations shake the core of America, we must revisit our fundamental values and ask, are we living up to our own standard? To narrow it down, America has 3 fundamental values: justice, equality, and freedom. Jeff, for short. We must protect Jeff at all costs. When anything attacks Jeff, let's ask ourselves a few questions. For justice, who is this injustice leaving behind? For equality, who can change the inequality in question? Lastly, for freedom. Freedom for whom or from what? These simple questions can lead us to compare America to the standard we set in our Constitution to truly become a more perfect union. The late US Representative John Lewis once said, speak up, speak out, get in the way, get in good trouble, necessary trouble, and help redeem the soul of America. As a champion of civil rights, he loved America. He served America. But more importantly, he criticized America because he knew what it could be. So I'll continue to show true patriot pride by supporting and criticizing the great American experiment as we all move forward as one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Your time was 10:13. Thank you all very much. You are all wonderful.
Thank you so much for judging.
Thank you.